And good afternoon, Producer Susan. You got yourself all dug out from the big snowstorm?
I got my car dug out, but it's going to be a big weekend here in Happy Valley. It's going to be Hockey Valley this weekend, and I'm getting a house full of guests. And I just thought, crap, I don't have a place for them to park.
You'll have to run a shuttle, let them park in the Costco or some Sam's Club and shuttle them up to your place. So,
How much
you'll,
snow did you get, Jersey Joe?
we got close to 12 inches. I was out. I call it the snow beast. I've got a garden tractor that's got a 44-inch snow blower on the front. And not only was I doing myself, I was doing all my neighbors. And a lot of my neighbors have uphill driveways
Oh,
and they couldn't make it up their driveway, so they parked on the street. And of course, the snowplow came by and just completely buried their cars. So I went out Monday morning to finish up some touch-up work, and I see all my neighbors out there with snow shovels trying to dig their cars out. So I went over with the snow beast and blew 80% of the snow away from their cars, so they could get their cars out of the ditch or out
well,
of the
we
sidewalk.
got we got a solid foot of nice powdery snow. We were fortunate that we didn't get any ice.
Well, we got the 10, 12 inches of snow, and then late in the afternoon on Sunday, the ice came down. It started to
Mm.
sleet, and it put a half inch. And if you hadn't got the snow off ahead of time, like I did, you had a half inch of solid ice, like icing on a cake, above the snow,
Uh,
and that foiled any attempt to do anything if you didn't. So,
yeah,
uh,
we didn't get any ice, so we were lucky in that regard.
okay, all right. Well, then you made out, and any more snow? We don't have any more snow coming. We don't think.
No, I mean we've been getting some flurries, but here's the ridiculous thing I heard this week is
What?
that we have a local ski area. Now Monday, so every school in the county was closed, all the universities in the county were closed, and it was actually a lovely day on Monday. This if you were dressed properly for the weather, the sun was shining, it was beautiful powder, and everybody was complaining that the local ski area was too crowded.
Couldn't
Like,
get
what do
to
you
work. Yeah.
expect?
Couldn't get to
And
work.
all
Couldn't.
their
Yeah.
rentals were sold out. All
Yeah.
the ski rentals were sold out.
They couldn't get to work. Couldn't get to school, but you could get to the ski area,
But you could get to the ski area, and
huh?
everybody was complaining that it was too crowded and they were sold out of all the rentals.
Interesting. All right. You want to hear what we're going to try to talk about today? Get through?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, today's the 28th of January. It's the year and 1 week anniversary of Trump's inauguration, and it's 3 days after, quote, the blizzard, which they said was the most snow they've had here in 15 years in New Jersey. When I lived in Syracuse for 8 years, we would have called this Tuesday. You know, I mean, come on, 10 inches of snow Tuesday. Uh, but here they called it the blizzard, the blizzard of 2026. Um, but anyway, by the way, we have another weather-related thing we're going to talk about later on in the show. But let me move on. Our quote of the week this week came in from a listener in Rhode Island, and it's from columnist George Will on how hard it is to find common sense these days. Um, you might be familiar with that listener in Rhode Island.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
we
She's a
this week
regular commenter.
a regular commenter. Yes, she gives a lot of feedback. Our stupidest thing this week, we have three nominees. It could have been four. We have three nominees and a runner-up. The first is a collection of street interviews with young people who apparently didn't learn anything in school. The second is a statement by the Arizona Attorney General telling residents of that state that they have the right to shoot ICE agents if they enter their home unannounced. And I'll tell you why that's an incredibly stupid thing to tell people. And the third is a decision by a Spirit Airlines gate agent to not let a family in Los Angeles board a flight to Puerto Rico because their 2-year-old child didn't have a passport. And we'll talk why that was so stupid. This
You
could have
need a
been our fourth
passport.
thing, but this is our runner-up. In the runner-up this week, we have a story about Minneapolis about where more than 50 women went into a local Target store to buy something, and then they just turned around and immediately returned it. And we'll tell you why that's incredibly stupid and why they did it. In our way back segment, we have a quote from Senator Chuck Schumer demanding that the government do more to speed up the deportation process of illegal aliens living in this country. You wouldn't believe it's the same guy. In our global warming update segment, we'll tell you how global warming is affecting ferry service between New Jersey and New York City. Did you know that there's a bunch of ferries that will take you from New Jersey or Staten Island to Manhattan?
Yeah, Jersey. I regularly take the Jersey City ferry and the Hoboken ferry.
Well, good. Well, we're going to tell you what happened, how global warming is affecting the ferry service. Um, you're familiar with GLP medications, right? Like
Yep.
Wegovy and Ozempic and that stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we'll tell you why the airlines are potentially looking at saving $100 million a year annually as a result of people taking GLP medications to lose weight. We'll tell you about a story that CNN ran telling listeners why the average tax refund this year, this tax season, that they could expect to see $1,000 bigger refund this year than the refund they got last year, and whose name they managed to leave out of that rather lengthy report. Um, let's see. And our taxpayer relief shot this week comes from Stockton, California, where the son of a jewelry store owner takes on 8 armed robbers. And it's pretty intense when we play that one. All right. So, do you ever heard of a guy named George Will?
I don't think so.
Well, he's a columnist. He's he's an older guy, but he's very well respected. He's very conservative. And anyway, here's what he wrote about the scarcity of common sense. And this is from our listener in Rhode Island. He said, "This is an age in which one cannot find common sense without a search warrant." How's that?
True.
So
True.
true. So true, but so sad. So
Common
sad.
sense is grossly lacking today, and I think what's even scarier is not necessarily the common sense, but the lack of just thought process of people having their own thoughts and
Yeah.
actually thinking through things and having
Yeah. Critical.
a
Yeah.
rational conversation back and forth, like respectfully disagreeing and
Right.
debating in
And critical
respectfully.
thinking. Critical thinking.
Critical
So
thinking. Yeah,
yeah.
critical thinking.
I read some of this stuff on these liberal websites, and I'm going, how just you read it without even doing any research. How absolutely ridiculous is that? And everybody just accept, we've all heard the phrase confirmation bias, right? They're
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
eager
absolutely.
and willing to believe that no matter how ridiculous it is, they say, yeah, 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 and they start commenting, oh, this is terrible. It's ridiculous. It's so blatantly false, but they just swallow it hook, line, and sinker.
Mhm.
So, all right. You want to get into our stupidest thing I've heard all week? We've
Yeah,
got
what's the
three
most stupidest thing
contenders.
you heard this week?
Well, I've got three contenders. You're gonna have to pick. You're gonna have to pick the out of three. You might even want to include the fourth. But here's our first one. This is a guy you've seen this guy. He interviews kids on the street. This is a different guy. He's interviewing people on the street, asking them simple questions. You think your 12-year-old niece should know the answer to, right? So simple. Here we go. Uh,
Stars are on the United States flag? 103. 103?
so the first question is
What?
how many
Wait,
stars
what?
how many stars
What?
I'll back it up. How many stars on there? And this is not one person. There's like a group of girls and they're debating between them how many stars on the American flag. Here we go.
Stars are on the United States flag? 103. 103?
I know, but I got 51, 32.
What country is the Queen of England from?
Not a politics guy. Well, I don't know. I really don't know.
Just take a guess. Like, what country is the Queen of England from?
Europe? I don't know. Take a guess.
What ocean is on the east side of the United States?
Pacific? No, I can't do the oceans. I don't do the Pacific, right?
Can you name the three Kardashian sisters?
Kim, Courtney, and Chloe.
Bonus points for the brother?
Robert.
What?
Rob.
What's the capital of the United States?
The there's a capital? What?
Yes.
Lexi.
Take a guess.
I don't know. Probably California.
Yeah, that's right.
It is?
No.
So now the scariest thing is every one of those people are of voting age. They can all vote.
Yeah,
Should these
I
people be
think we've
allowed
said
to
this
vote?
before on this show that there needs to be a basic fundamental test, and I think those are all very excellent questions as to, because they're all super easy. This isn't even are you smarter than a fifth grader? This is are you smarter than a kindergartner
Yeah.
test of.
What's the capital of the United States? How many stars on the flag? Come
Yeah,
on.
like these are all things you learn like in second grade or third grade. This isn't even like, are you smarter than a fifth grader?
But they can
Yeah,
but they
these
can
people
all
should not be allowed to vote.
But they can all name the three Kardashian systems and their brother.
Yeah, I actually probably don't think I know who the brother is.
Well, they said Rob or Bob or
Oh,
Robert or
I
what.
honestly, I don't know. I don't even
Oh.
know.
But how sad is it they can name the three Kardashian systems, but they can't name the capital of the United States? They don't know what ocean is on the east coast of the United States.
Yeah, what the stars are on the flag.
How many stars are so? It's just so. I mean, it's funny, but it's so sad.
I mean, I might let it slide if you didn't know what the stripes represented,
Right,
because
which is the 13 original colonies.
yeah, which unless you might have been sleeping in like fifth grade social studies class, but
Yeah.
the stars, everybody should know what the stars
Yeah.
represent.
But if anybody wants to search for that clip, it's a guy named James Klug, Klug. Just
Mm.
Google James Klug, and he does a bunch of this stuff. But it was both hilarious and not sad and also frightening that these people decide who our next president is.
Yeah.
And all right. Now here, so that's nominee number one. Second, a nominee during an interview, the Arizona Attorney General was asked by, she was doing an interview, and she was asked by the interviewer, and don't ask me why this interviewer chose to ask this question because it's never happened. She said, "Well, yeah, if ICE agents broke into your home unannounced, they broke open your front door unannounced, would a homeowner have the right to shoot them?" Now, it's never happened, and I don't know why the homeowner or why the interviewer even chose to raise that question because it's maybe what's the word I'm looking for?
It is an interesting question though, like
Okay.
a theoretical question, because if they are just breaking into your house unannounced, how do you know that they're ICE versus a burglar?
Okay. But so anyway, so the Attorney General says yes. Now, if so, so yes, you have the legal right to shoot them. But let's talk about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that you have the legal right to shoot. But if 3 to 5 guys wearing tactical vests and helmets break through your front door and all you
Yeah,
have
you're
is and
dead.
they're carrying rifles and all you have is a pistol,
You're dead.
if you decide to exercise that legal right, sometime in the next 60 seconds, you're going to wind up dead right there.
Yeah.
So, knowledge is knowing that you have the right to shoot them. Wisdom is knowing that you shouldn't, regardless who the
Yeah.
hell they are. All right. So, I think it was incredibly stupid of the Attorney General. And she didn't add what I just told you. She just said, yes, yes, you have the legal right to do that. And she just left it there. I,
Yeah.
I think she had an obligation to tell people, yes, you have the legal right to do that, but it would be an incredibly foolish thing to do
Yeah, because they're
because
they're trained. If they see a weapon in your hand, they're going to shoot you, period.
right, and particularly if that weapon fires, and they're willing, by the way, people call them bulletproof vests. They're ballistic vests, and they will stop any pistol bullet. Now, you know what the difference between a bulletproof vest and a ballistic vest is?
Yeah, the police wear the ballistic vests. I mean, they will protect you from maybe a handgun, but they're not going to protect you necessarily from a high-powered rifle.
Rifle, right. And our soldiers, when they were in Afghanistan, they would wear these vests that had like steel plates inside of them. Those were
Yeah.
bulletproof. But what police officers wear and what the ICE agents wear, they're ballistic vests, and they'll stop a knife and they'll stop a pistol bullet. But they're not truly bulletproof. But that's like the point is, if you shoot at anybody wearing a ballistic vest, unless you can hit him in the head every time, your shot's not going to do any good, and you're going
Even
to wind up.
our regular officers that patrol your streets, they wear ballistic vests under their uniforms.
Right,
They're not especially comfortable, but they wear them for 8 hours a day or 12-hour days
right,
shifts. So, they're somewhat comfortable. They have
right,
some flexibility, but not a lot of flexibility.
right.
But if they're going into a situation where they know they're going to be encountering some really bad guys, they will actually put an extra metal plate into their vest to protect them.
Well, when SWAT comes online, if they've got somebody, a barricaded suspect with a
Yeah.
rifle, when SWAT shows up, SWAT will be wearing bulletproof vests with the steel
Yeah.
plates inside. Steel, sometimes ceramic, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, so that's number two. The Attorney General telling people they have the right to shoot ICE agents, but not telling them why they shouldn't. Now here comes number three. We all know Spirit. All right, so Spirit Airlines, LA. There's a flight from LA to Puerto Rico. A couple traveling with their 2-year-old child. They both have passports as their ID. The gate agent denies the family boarding because they don't have a passport for their 2-year-old child, telling the parents you have to have a passport because this is an international flight.
But it's not an international flight.
No, because Puerto Rico is part of the United States. You do not need a you do not need a passport to go from the U.S. to Puerto
And
Rico or
anybody
vice.
working as a gate agent, especially on any of the island flights, should know that. That's
But this is
basic
he. But this
knowledge.
person was in Los Angeles, so I think this person is probably one of those people who don't know how many stars on the American flag. All right. If you don't know that Puerto Rico is part of the United States, and he literally denied them boarding, they missed the flight. So of those three, the young people who couldn't answer those simple questions, the attorney general who told people you can shoot ICE agents, or the Spirit Airlines gate agent who denied the family boarding, who do you
Man,
pick?
that's a tough one. I think the first one, I mean, all of those were really basic questions that
Sure.
every American who's over the age of 10 years old
Right.
should know.
So, what country is the Queen of England from?
England.
You sure now? You sure? You
Absolutely.
sure she's not from Denmark? Okay, just checking. All right. Now, here was the
What were the
runner-up.
questions? It was the Queen of England, the 50 stars.
The capital of the United States. What ocean is on the What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Yeah, that was just those four questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's your turn. Now this. Now you tell me. I put this as a runner-up. It could be one of the four. So a week ago, as a protest against ICE, 50 women went into a local Target store in Minneapolis. They each bought one box of Morton salt in a Target store. They immediately, as soon as they went through the register, immediately turned right around with their receipt and went back to the returns and refunds window to return the box of salt as a protest. And their logic for the salt, they said, well, salt melts ice. And they all stood in line. It had to be to buy the salt. Well, first of all, you got to drive to the store, buy the salt, go through the checkout line, and then 50 people lined up at the refund window to return their box of salt. Um, that was my runner-up for the stupidest thing all week. I mean, did you hear about that?
I
Out
did, and this is so ridiculous because this is a this isn't even a protest. This is the only thing this did was create work for some minimum wage Target worker.
clerk, right?
Clerk.
Right.
And
Plus
the
the
only thing it
cashiers, right?
hurts is Target. It hurts the poor person, the student, the college student, or the whoever is making $15 an hour behind the counter at Target and Target. It doesn't hurt ICE. It proves 0 point.
It proved 0 points. Yeah, just it wasted all their anyway. But it did not make the national news, by the way. So it made the local news, but not the national news.
And
So
the other thing, when you return those products like that, those most often don't get, even if you never opened a package, those products most often don't get put back on the shelf. They get sold to a third-hand distributor.
right. Or if they're food products, sometimes they just have policies that just trash them. And I don't know if
Yeah.
they consider a box of salt a food product, but
Yeah,
uh,
even if a product is not opened, it doesn't go
yeah, they
back on the
won't.
shelf.
They won't put it back on the shelf. Um, so that was
That's where
our
you find your things at like Ollie's Bargain Outlet
yeah,
or Ocean State Job Lots.
exactly. All right, you want to go to the Wayback Machine?
Yeah, what's in the Wayback Machine today?
Chuck Schumer, 1993, telling why we need to find ways to speed up the deportation process. Here we go. Oh, hang on.
For people who legitimately
Hang
deserve
on.
asylum, need to keep the doors open for people who legitimately deserve asylum, but that the abuses are so large that unless you undergo major changes, you're not going to be able to sustain it. Someone's in the country illegally. After 6 months of tracking them down, the INS catches up to them, and all of a sudden that person says asylum and gets another 2 years to go through this. That has not been addressed here, and I think that's a major problem. Also, the many levels of appeal that have been built into the process that make it so long and time consuming that it becomes ridiculous. Our immigration policies are a shambles, plain and simple. And the word has gone out from one corner of the globe to the other that not only is there a legitimate policy, but there's a policy that's wide open to abuse. There's a need.
So he could be a spokesman for the Trump administration, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody wants a clip, you can either email me at joe@jerzee.com or give producer Susan a day or two, and you'll be able to pull that clip off the website. Or again, just email me, joe@jerseyjoe.com. Be happy to send you that clip. And that, by the way, is from the Atlas. If you Google the Atlas Society, they have a bunch of great clips. By the way, do you know where Atlas Society comes from?
No, I don't.
You familiar with the author Ayn Rand?
Yeah, yeah. Dear
Well,
Abby.
no, Ayn Rand,
Oh, who's Dear Abby? What's her real name?
no, I don't know, but Ayn Rand was the author. She wrote a couple of books on conservatism and anti-socialism. She wrote a book called Atlas Shrugged.
Mm.
We've actually quoted. She died back in the 50s, but she wrote some great books, highly critical of socialism. And one of her books was called Atlas Shrugged. So this conservative group has adopted the Atlas Society as their name.
And I know that our listener from Rhode Island will correct me on the real identity of Dear Abby and Ann Landers.
Ann Landers, yes. All right. All right. So that's our way back. All right. Now, another sure sign of global warming. We talked about the ferries that run. So there are commuter ferries. You take a train into Hoboken,
Yep.
and while you can take an underground train, it's called PATH, Port Authority Trans Hudson.
Yep.
It's a subway that goes under the Hudson River, brings you up in Penn Station, or it used to be the World Trade Center. I think and of course after the World Trade Centers were
Mhm.
destroyed, they had to shut that down. I think they've reopened it.
Yeah.
But you can take a subway under the
Mhm.
Hudson River. But there's also ferry service that takes you right to Battery Park in the Wall Street district.
That'd be the one that comes out of Jersey City.
And there's one out of Jersey. So there's one out of Hoboken, one out of Jersey City, and there's also a ferry from Staten Island
Yep.
to Battery Park in Lower Manhattan. But for the first time in more than a decade, ice in the Hudson River has shut down ferry service between both New Jersey and Staten Island into Manhattan. Now, that's more than a decade. And when you do a Google search, you can put time boundaries on it, right? You can say,
Yes. Yeah.
and I did a time-bounded search for, ferry service suspension, ice, Hudson River, because they mentioned it's been, many, many years. Trust me, in the past decade, this is, and by the way, do you know that the Hudson River in and around New York City actually has a salt content because of the tide? When the
Yeah.
tide comes back in, it draws salt water back in from the
Yeah.
ocean,
Absolutely.
which is why while the Hudson, it's not unusual for the Hudson River to freeze further up around, you get up around,
Like Poughkeepsie,
Tarrytown,
Plattsburgh,
the Tappan Zee Bridge up
Tappan
around
Zee.
there.
Yeah.
But down around Manhattan, because it's salt water. But so for the first time in more than a decade, they've had to shut down ferry service because the Hudson River's icing over. Now, is that a sign of global warming? Is that how global warming works?
Yeah, I grew up around the New York City area and spent, most of my life there, and I don't ever remember the Hudson River freezing. At least, like you said, around Manhattan, I do remember the Hudson River freezing up,
Yeah, further
in
north,
upstate
up
New
around
York.
north of the Tappan Zee Bridge. Yes,
Yeah, I
but
don't ever remember the Hudson River freezing.
yeah, I ought to go expand my search. I only put a 10-year time. I maybe ought to do a 20-year bound on it when I did my search. Um, so yeah, so is that a sign of global warming or not that the Hudson River's freezing
Yeah,
over?
yeah, definitely not.
Okay. All right. GLP medications. I figured last time I looked, I think 20 some million people were taking GLP, Ozempic, Wegovy. And by the way, I understand they're coming out with an oral medication, but most of
Yeah, I
these
heard
things,
there's a pill now instead of the
there's a
shot.
pill, right? But the airlines have done some calculations. By the way, as a pilot, I can tell you this, that the heavier the plane, the more fuel it takes to get the plane to take off and then to keep it airborne because the amount of lift you have to have enough, the lift you generate from the wing has to be enough to counteract
Mhm.
gravity pulling down on the total combined weight of the plane and the passenger fuel. Well, the heavier the plane, which includes the weight of the passengers, the more lift you have to generate. And to do that, you have to burn more fuel. Well, the airline has calculated if 25% of their passengers each lose an average of 20 pounds, they'll save $100 million a year.
Mhm.
So how's that for an unexpected
Interesting.
benefit?
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting. All right. Um,
Now they're going to lose some money for people having to buy an extra seat.
what do you,
So
uh,
that now the airplanes are really cracking down on portly people having to purchase the extra seat.
no, they'll happily sell you two seats.
Oh, yeah, but if people are skinnier and don't need to purchase the extra seat.
Well, that's assuming, they can always adjust their schedule so that they sell out the planes, As long as they're running 96, 97% capacity, I'm sure they can work around that. But that's anyway, so they're looking at $100 million a year bonus, and that could happen in less than 2 or 3 years at the rate people are taking up these GLP-1 medications. All right. So CNN did this great story on why people's tax refunds will this is most likely be $1,000 more this tax season. So blah blah blah. Let me read on blah blah blah. Average refund last year was 3,167. Blah blah blah. The Treasury is now projecting tax refunds will increase by an average of $1,000 this year. Why? Two main reasons. Congress made a number of new tax expand et cetera, et cetera. They go on. This is got to be a 3,000 word story. It goes into detail about seeing the expanded deduction for people on Social Security, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and boom, boom, boom. You know whose name doesn't get mentioned once in this entire story?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, not mentioned once. How do you write this was his signature piece. How many times did you hear Trump talking about the one big beautiful bill? We're going to get this thing through Congress. He was a driving force behind the one big beautiful bill.
Yep.
And not once did they mention Donald Trump in this entire story. So do you think there's any bias there?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Again, regardless of what you think of him, he is the reason why your tax return will change this year.
Well, you're going to get $1,000 on average. The average person is going to see an extra $1,000 this year.
I hope so.
All right. How much time we got left?
We only have about 7 minutes, 7, 8 minutes.
All right. Well, then we're going to go right to our taxpayer relief shot. And here's why we call him taxpayer relief shot. And here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, telling you why we call them taxpayer relief shots. Oh, here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save taxpayers money.
Now, this story, have you ever been to one of these places where they take a big old building and they open it up on the weekends and they break it up into 20 or 30 little individual stalls inside of a big building? Have you ever been to one of those?
Yeah, they're like business co-ops.
Yeah, almost like an indoor flea market.
Yeah.
But they can be selling some really high-end stuff. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Well, this is a guy. He's got a jewelry store. In fact, it's not just weekends. This is 6 days a week, and he runs a jewelry store out of a shop inside one of these big buildings, which is co-located with 20, 30 or other businesses. And as you're going to hear, about 15, 20 years ago, his father was killed when people came in to rob his jewelry store, and he's continuing. So it's now his father was killed by robbers in this same building 15 or 20 years ago, and now he and his son are still running the same jewelry store in the same location in the same building. And here's what happened in that same exact building 15, 20 years later. Here we go.
Continuing to investigate the shooting that happened in a crowded flea market.
ABC 10's Gabriel Kors was first on the scene yesterday, and he's back at that flea market tonight. Gabriel, talk about a scary weekend.
Yeah, Chris and Laura, it's hard to believe that this is where those gunshots ring out just yesterday. The gates here are locked, but inside the marks of the violence are impossible to miss. Bullet holes piercing through metal, blood still stained on the floor, and a business owner left trying to process how his family was able to survive. I do want to warn you that some of the images you're about to see may be disturbing.
We can go inside.
Inside the Stockton flea market, right next to more than 20 bullet holes.
And then we have more bullets right here.
Now
20 bullet holes. There was a freaking shootout. Here.
Guard into his family's longtime jewelry store, Salvador Cervantes has one message.
We all need to protect each other as a community.
That's exactly what he says his son was trying to do around noon Sunday. Gunfire rang out inside this crowded flea market.
They were trying to rob us. They said it was a total of 8 people that came in. One of them jumped over the counter. He threw the bag to my niece and my nephew who were inside the booth here and demanded them to put everything inside, otherwise he was going to kill them.
Salvador says the robbers opened fire first, followed by his son.
Yeah, my son, yes, he was the one who saved our lives.
In the end, police say 2 lives were lost and a woman suffered a non-life-threatening injury. Investigators have not confirmed that the shooting was self-defense or that it involved a robbery, but they haven't ruled it out and say no arrests have been made. In a statement, Stockton's vice mayor said preliminary information indicates that the business owners acted in self-defense. Salvador believes the 2 people who died were the attempted robbers.
He's my angel at the moment, because I'm here because of him again.
Shockingly, this isn't the first time that the Cervantes family's had to deal with this type of situation. Behind the counter here is a photo of Salvador's late father, killed in another robbery here back in 2012.
For whatever reason, we just keep on getting targeted.
According to Crime Stoppers, even after 13 years, police have still not found the people who killed Salvador's father. Police say that in 2022, 3 men tried to rob Salvador at his home. His son opened fire. A gun battle left the suspects hospitalized.
I really would like to let them know to stop doing that, because they hurting a lot of families and they taking away a lot of their freedom. It would be great if they decide to start doing something good in life.
As for his life, Salvador says,
I'm feeling really grateful that I'm still here. We just leave it up to God, and that's it.
So, so 8 against 1, 8 armed robbers against his son with one. So, do you think going to the range and practicing pays off?
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, it's
I think it's
amazing.
also just, not just how good you can shoot, how well you can shoot, but just being comfortable. I think, people, I don't, if you're not comfortable with a gun, I don't want you to have a gun.
No, yeah, it's
It's
having
just being comfortable with it.
having the presence of being presence of mind. Not how does this thing work? I know what
Mhm.
I'm doing. I know what I'm aiming at. I know and having the presence of mind to remain. As a pilot, you can be in all sorts of critical situations. You have to remain calm,
Mhm.
level-headed. Everything has to be methodical and controlled. And this son, as you heard, this was not the son's first encounter with robbers. As you heard him talk about the attempted robbery at his home, where his son wound up shooting and hospitalizing 2 robbers at their home a couple of years ago. So this was not his son's first encounter with armed robbers. So, good for the son. All right.
Yeah.
Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Nope, it's going to be, it's 2 degrees here. It was -5 when I left for work this morning. It's going to
Okay.
continue to be cold till Monday, so stay warm.
All right. You too. All right. Let me sign off here. All right. Everybody, thanks for listening, giving up 30 minutes out of your day. Um, if you'd like to you want to see any of these links or play them back, give producer Susan a day or two to get them up on the website. You'll be able to find those story links, including not just the audio, but also some of the written story links, like the CNN story about the tax refund.
Yep.
You'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerseyjoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerseyjoe.com. However, if you'd also like me to send you any of those directly, just send me an email to justjoe@jerseyjoe.com. Or if you'd like to get on our podcast distribution list, just send me an email to joe@jerseyjoe.com and say, please put me on your podcast distribution list. That way the podcast will show up in your inbox, your email inbox, instead of having to search for it on Spotify. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and 2 E's. And with that, producer Susan, anything else before we sign
Nope.
off?
Stay warm.
You say warm. Talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.